Hello everyone, my name is Joseph Zabrowski. I want to share a lot with you here today. We're going to start off something kind of directly related to what I'm going to be talking about, and then I will come back to it. Up front, I want to say thank you to Adam, 1984 here, his YouTube channel. I'm going to use that. I'm also going to I want to say thank you to Thomas F. Madden, who's a professor. Here's a theological professor. Catholic Education Resource Center. I also want to thank the Bible, Genesis 16. We're going to talk about that as well. So let's take it from the start here. I just want to show you this real quick. This is the Jesuit Pope Francis.
And if,
by the way, I am a Catholic, okay? I am a Catholic, all right? And here we go.
At times, our efforts and works seem to fail and not produce fruit, we need to remember that we are followers of Jesus Christ, and his life, humanly speaking, ended in failure, the failure of the cross.
Please know that in that sermon that the Pope gave, he did not then go on to say that even though Jesus fell on the cross, it came to bear fruit thereafter. He never said anything about it. He made that definitive statement and never said anything about Jesus Christ's death on the cross, which is the essence, the very centerpiece of God in his word. He said that it was a failure. Okay, now hold on to that because we're going to come back to that at the end. But right now, we're going to talk about what's going on in our country. All right, and I'm going to start off here with Genesis 16 and Hagar and Ishmael. We're going to go to Genesis 16:12, and it says, the angel of the Lord also said to her. Now, when he says her, we're talking about Hagar. Hagar was Sarah, who was Abraham's wife, the chosen wife, so to speak. Hagar was her maidservant. And Sarah was barren. She could not give birth to a child. So back in those times, they would allow their husband to sleep with their maidservant to bring forth a child. And Hagar brought forth many children. Okay, Sarah got bitter about it, and finally God opened up Sarah's womb and gave her a child who was the chosen one, Isaac. Well, during that time that she was pregnant, she started to really disdain Hagar, and she started giving her a really hard time. And so Hagar fled to the desert. And while she was in the desert getting ready to die, the angel of the Lord came to Hagar, and the angel of the Lord said, you are now pregnant, and you will give birth to a son. You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. And he will live in hostility toward all of his brothers. Okay, now Ishmael was the forerunner to the descendants of Islam today. Islam today, from which many of the Muslim terrorists come from, Islam, they all are descendants of Ishmael. As you see here, it says that he will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. And he will live in hostility toward all of his brothers. This was prophesied by God, and this prophecy has come to pass. This has been going on for centuries, and as we see today, it's going on right in front of our eyes. Just recently in Mali, I think it was yesterday, and then days before that in France. Many of these Muslim attacks have taken place in America. We've seen our own people killed from this just evil. Okay, so now I just want to point out that there's nothing that we can do about it. This is prophesied. This is going to happen. But we need to look at history. History repeats itself, and the reason that saying has been around for so long is because it is the truth, and the truth strikes a chord. History does repeat itself, and if we don't know our history, we will be judged, put into judgment, because we are not aware of that history, and we will come into the same type of situation. Thus, history will repeat itself. Now, the real history of the Crusades is you often hear in the media of America's government. They always tell you, and in the world, they want to give you this vision of the Crusades as being something bad. And I tell you in simple terms that if the Crusades did not happen, we would all be lampshades. Western civilization would not even have come to fruition. okay? And a lot of people don't know that because they're so indoctrinated by our lying media. You see, here in America, we have a government that is no longer the American government. We have a coup in America. Okay, that means that our government has been taken over. It's a coup. We are a government of bankers, by bankers, and for bankers. Okay, and as a result, we have a complete lie and deception in the office of president. Okay, that creature in the office of president who is a Muslim terrorist was put there by deception. Okay, and I say that because he is not a naturalized citizen of America. In order for a president of the United States to be a president of the United States, they have to be a natural born citizen of America. That means that his mother and father should both be born in America. His mother and father were not both born in America. His father was not born in America. Okay, therefore he is not a naturalized born citizen of America, and therefore he should not, according to the Constitution, be president of the United States. So he is in there by deception, and that is why everything that comes out of his mouth is deception. Case in point, you've recently heard him in the news wanting to allow 10,000, some people say up to, they're talking like 100,000 Syrian refugees to come into America. Now in Syria they have killed over 300,000 of our Christian brothers and sisters. Now, by the way, the Pope says nothing about it when he came to America, about our brothers and sisters in Syria being slaughtered, okay? So he wants to bring in all of these Syrian refugees, most of whom are military aged, okay? And many of them are Muslims, okay? And not the Christians. He doesn't want to bring in Christian Syrians. He wants to bring in Muslim Syrians. And why do you think that is? Okay, he's a Muslim. He's a Muslim terrorist. And he wants to bring in Muslim refugees into America. And our government is, the House is standing against it. And we're going to see what the senators are going to do here shortly. But this is because we have our enemy in the office of president. He has kept our border open, wide open for years now, and numerous, it is said we have over 30 million illegal aliens in America. Now, what is going on at the border is they're bringing in people, and do you think in those over 30 million illegal aliens that any of them are Muslim terrorists? Oh, if you don't, you're deceived, okay? There are numerous Muslim terrorists already in America. So what is going on the border is they are, as you have seen on the political front, you've seen Obama and the Pope kind of buddying up with each other. And what's going on there is that the American government is using our tax dollars and is paying the Catholic Church and the Baptist Church to open up church facilities near the border and to take these illegal aliens into America and, give them food and let them take a shower and clothe them and then put them on buses and ship them into America proper. Throughout all of America, we're being infiltrated with illegals. This is unconstitutional. And our Constitution is based on the law of nations, and the law of nations is based on Mosaic and canon law. In many ways, our Constitution is a holy document because it is based on the law of nations, which is based on Mosaic and canon law. So the Catholic Church, which is one of the richest entities in the world, they hold more real estate than any entity in the world. They're a multi-billion-dollar entity. Okay, they are a super state. The Vatican is a super state. And now our government is giving our tax dollars to the Catholic Church, giving them millions of dollars to illegally bring in these aliens. And so the Pope comes to America and is talking about the importance of an open border, but he doesn't say anything about the recent thing that happened right before he came. That was not by coincidence that happened. With Planned Parenthood, we've seen them on tape talking about how many babies they're going to kill and talking about selling the baby parts. We've seen it, and the Pope didn't say one word about all the babies being killed in America. He didn't say one word about selling the baby parts. He didn't say one word about the Syrian refugees, our Christian brothers and sisters, being killed to the tune of over 300,000. But yeah, he talked about we need to keep our borders open. I mean, how much more in your face can it be, my friends? There's a money motive here. Is this make your heart sick? Let's speak the truth, okay? My brother and sister Catholics, brother and sisters, I open this up telling you that I'm a Catholic, and there's many Catholics who are very wise, and they know what's going on, and they're not going along with it. I personally have stopped giving money to the Catholic Church, okay? And it's really a confusing time. I'm not going to fund this craziness, this illegal, unconstitutional, antichrist movement in the Catholic Church. And my friends, we need to be standing up and speaking to our priests and speaking to our pastors and telling them the truth if they don't know it, okay? And the reason America is in the position that they are in is because we, the Christians, are the problem. If the truth was spoken in the churches right now, none of this would be going on. Okay, so I'm going to continue to move on. Part of history is the Crusades. Okay, and if you don't know your history, you will be doomed to repeat it. There's a reason that saying is a saying. And I'm going to start reading here. Christians in the 11th century were not paranoid fanatics. Muslims were really gunning for them. While Muslims can be peaceful, Islam was born in war and grew the same way. From the time of Muhammad, the means of Muslim expansion was always the sword. Muslim thought divides the world into two spheres, the adobe of Islam and the adobe of war. Christianity, and for that matter any other non-Muslim religion, has no adobe. Christians and Jews can be tolerated within the Muslim state under Muslim rule, but in traditional Islam, Christian and Jewish states must be destroyed and their lands conquered. When Muhammad was waging war against Mecca in the 7th century, Christianity was the dominant religion of power and wealth. As the faith of the Roman Empire it spanned the entire Mediterranean, including the Middle East, where it was born. The Christian world, therefore, was prime target for the earliest caliphs, and it would remain so for Muslim leaders for the next 1,000 years. With enormous energy, the warriors of Islam struck out against the Christians shortly after Muhammad's death. They were extremely successful. Palestine, Syria, and Egypt, once the most heavily Christian areas in the world, quickly succumbed. By the 8th century, Muslim armies had conquered all the Christian North Africa and Spain. In the 7th century, the Seljuk Turks conquered Asia Minor, modern Turkey, which had been Christian since the time of St. Paul. The old Roman Empire, known to modern historians as the Byzantine Empire, was reduced to a little more than Greece. In desperation, the Emperor of Constantinople sent word to the Christians of Western Europe, asking them to aid their brothers and sisters in the East. This is what gave birth to the Crusades. They were not the brainchild of an ambitious pope or rambunctious, rapacious knights, but a response to the more than 4 centuries of conquest in which Muslims had already captured 2/3 of the old Christian world. 4 centuries, I repeat. In other words, they were killing Christians for 4 centuries before the Christians finally stood up for themselves. At some point, Christianity as a faith and a culture had to defend itself or be subsumed by Islam. The Crusades were that defense. So when you hear in the colleges, that spew their indoctrination day in and day out, because the colleges in America are controlled by this coup that is behind our government. The colleges are controlled, our whole society is controlled by this coup. These bankers who control our government, who control the world, who are vying for a one world government. They are in every aspect of our culture. They're in our colleges, they're in our schools. They control our media, and that's why you continually hear this lie. And most people, when you talk to them, they think the Crusades was a bad thing. If the Crusades did not occur, we would all be lampshades. Western civilization would not be here. I would not be speaking, and you would not be doing whatever you're doing. Okay? It was because the Christians finally stood up after thousands upon thousands had been killed. They finally stood up that we have Western civilization. Okay, this is a part of history. I'll go on. Pope Urban II called upon the Knights of Christendom to push back the conquest of Islam at the Council of Clermont in 1095. The response was tremendous. Many thousands of warriors took the vow of the cross and prepared for war. Why did they do it? The answer to that question has been badly misunderstood. In the wake of the Enlightenment, it was usually asserted that crusaders were merely Lacklands or ne'er-do-wells who took advantage of an opportunity to rob and pillage in a faraway land. The Crusaders expressed sentiments of piety, self-sacrifice, and the love of God were obviously not to be taken seriously. They were only a front for darker designs, so they say. During the past 2 decades, computer-assisted charter studies have demolished that contrivance. Scholars have discovered that crusading knights were generally wealthy men with plenty of their own land in Europe. Nevertheless, they willingly gave up everything to undertake the holy mission. Now, by the way, I'm going to stop there. Here in America, the land of the free, home of the brave, one nation under God, it is the exact same thing that had happened in America. Our forefathers, many of whom were plantation owners, many of whom were doctors, lawyers, men of means, they gave up their lives, they gave up their families to stand up for our country. They sacrificed sacrificial love, just like Jesus sacrificed his life. They sacrificed their lives for you and me. That's why we have freedom in this country. okay? While we idly sit by and our brothers and sisters are being killed and we say nothing, but we continue to watch our stupid idiot box televisions and continue to watch football and basketball and baseball and sitcoms, and our men are like a bunch of cowardice morons. We don't even stand up for what's going on in our country, and our country is falling away because the media, which is controlled, is trying to make our men out to be a bunch of little zombified little stand behind their wives and little morons who take whatever their children and their wife want to give them in terms of stepping on them. That's what they make the man out to be, some weakling. And many of the men, unfortunately, are going right along with this lie. Okay, of course there are very many men who are strong and stand up, but I'm talking to the people who are sitting on their couches and doing jack nothing. There are many people who are standing up. Okay, so crusading was not cheap. Even wealthy lords could easily impoverish themselves and their families by joining the crusade. They did not. They did so not because they expected material wealth, which many of them already had, but because they hoped to store up treasure where rust and moth could not corrupt. They were keenly aware of their sinfulness and eager to undertake their hardships of the crusade as a penitential act of charity and love. Okay, Europe is littered with thousands of medieval charters attesting to these sentiments. Thus, this is not rhetoric. This is part of history. It's archived. It's greatly sourced. Charters in which these men still speak out to us today if we will listen. If we will listen. Of course, they were not opposed to capturing booty if it could be had, but the truth is that the Crusades were notoriously bad for plunder. Few people got rich, but the vast majority returned with nothing. Urban II gave the Crusaders two goals, both of which would remain central to the Eastern Crusades for centuries. The first was to rescue the Christians of the East, as the successor Pope Innocent III, a Catholic pope, later wrote. Please listen to this. How does a man love according to divine precept his neighbor as himself, when knowing that his Christian brothers in faith and in name are held by the perfidious Muslims in strict confinement and weighed down by the yoke of heaviest servitude? He does not devote himself to the task of freeing them. He asked that as a question. Is it by chance that you do not know that many thousands of Christians are bound in slavery and imprisoned by Muslims, tortured with innumerable torments? In other words, this pope is speaking how a real pope should be speaking. Okay? What's going on in this world right now, we should have a pope speaking like this pope because he's a real pope. And he's telling you basically, if you love your neighbor as yourself, he says it right here, according to the divine precept, his neighbor. How does a man love according to the divine precept his neighbor of himself? He does it by standing up for his brothers and sisters. That's basically what he says. When his brothers and sisters are under attack by a satanic group such as the Muslims in this case, and right now today, ISIS, when we're attacked, we're supposed to stand up for our brothers and sisters. Brothers and sisters. Crusading, Professor Jonathan Riley Smith has rightly argued, was understood as an act of love. In this case, the love of one's neighbor. The crusade was seen as an errand of mercy to right a terrible wrong. As Pope Innocent III wrote to the Knights Templar, you carry out in deeds the words of the gospel. Greater love than this hath no man, that he lay down his life for his friends. You hear that, brother and sister sitting on the couch watching your stupid TV idiot box? Greater love than this hath no man than lay down his life for his friends. You see on the horizon the tempest that is coming your way? You see it? You see it in Mali? You see it in France? You see it in your own country? Do you know that we have what's called Islamburg in America, where they train Muslims? And they've been doing it for years. They train Muslims to kill we the Christians. Okay? Wake up, my friends, or our history will repeat itself. Do you know that your schools are being inundated with Muslim doctrine? Your public schools, where the Bible used to be there and prayer used to be there, they now have infiltrated it with Muslim doctrine about Muhammad. Your kids are being taught about Muhammad in Islam rather than God and Christianity. Okay? The public schools are the churches of Satan. And if you allow your kids to be indoctrinated with that drivel, you will be called to account. Okay? It's the way that it is. The second goal was the liberation of Jerusalem. and the other places made holy by the life of Christ. The word crusade in modern medieval crusaders saw themselves as pilgrims, performing acts of righteousness on their way to the Holy Sepulchre. The crusade indulgence they received was canonically related to the pilgrimage indulgence. This goal was frequently described in feudal terms. When calling the Fifth Crusade in 1215, Innocent III once again wrote, "Consider, most dear sons, consider carefully, that if any temporal king was thrown out of his domain and perhaps captured, would he not, when he was restored to his pristine liberty, and the time had come for dispensing justice, look on his vassals as unfaithful and traitors, unless they had committed not only their property but also their persons to the task of freeing him? And similarly, will not Jesus Christ, the King of kings and Lord of lords, whose servant you cannot deny being, who joined your soul to your body, who redeemed you with the precious blood, condemn you for the vice of ingratitude and the crime of infidelity if you neglect to help him?" Do you understand what he's saying there, my friends? Your brothers and sisters are being slaughtered in Syria. Our brothers and sisters are being killed by this Muslim terrorist plight. And we sit by idly. There's many who are talking. If you're not talking, if you're not saying something, if you're not standing up, if you're not creating a blog or videos, if you're not going out and telling your neighbors and preparing them, then you're part of the problem. Okay? If you're not talking to your priests and pastors and telling them to start talking about the truth in your church, if you're not doing something, then you're part of the problem. And as he says here, condemn you for the vice of ingratitude and crime of infidelity if you neglect to help him. Neglect to help him, capital H, that's God. The reconquest of Jerusalem, therefore, was not colonialism, but an act of restoration and open declaration of one's love of God. Medieval men knew, of course, that God had the power to restore Jerusalem himself. Indeed, he had the power to restore the whole world to his rule. Yet, as St. Bernard Clairvoy preached, his refusal to do so was a blessing to his people. Again, I say, consider the almighty goodness and pay heed to his plans of mercy. He puts himself under obligation to you, or rather feigns to do so, that he can help you to satisfy your obligations toward himself. I call blessed the generation that can seize an opportunity of such rich indulgence as this. It is often assumed that the central goal of the Crusades was forced conversion of the Muslim world. Nothing, I repeat, nothing could be further from the truth. For from their perspective of medieval Christians, Muslims were the enemies of Christ and his church. It was the Crusaders' task to defeat and defend against them. That was all. Muslims who lived in Crusade-won territories were generally allowed to retain their property and livelihood and always their religion. Indeed, throughout the history of the Crusaders' Kingdom of Jerusalem, Muslim inhabitants far outnumbered the Catholics. It was not until the 13th century that the Franciscans began conversion efforts among Muslims, but these were mostly unsuccessful and finally abandoned. In any case, such efforts were by peaceful persuasion, not the threat of violence. There's the history, my friends. So, when you have a coup government in place in America, a government is supposedly the leader of the world, and that coup government is trying to bring forth a one world government through Americans' tax dollars. They're funding their agenda through Americans' tax dollars. They're using the American military to go into countries and destroy them, such as Syria. Our government funds Al-Qaeda. We are funding our enemy. We're funding our enemy to take over countries like Syria. They want to take over Syria because Syria is a geographically perfectly placed country that everybody wants. And it has all kinds of ties. It has all kinds of ties to oil. It has all kinds of ties to control. When you have the region of Syria, you can control much of the Middle East. Okay, so that's what's going on here, my friends. And here we go. I'm going to move on here and show you. Obama asked for $500 million to fund ISIS in Syria. It's all over the internet. If you don't know that our government is funding Al-Qaeda, you are way behind. Okay, you are way behind. You are lost. Okay, this is now in the mainstream media. Our tax dollars fund our enemy, and that freak in the office of president, the enemy within America, is the guy at the head. Okay, he's moving this whole agenda forward. Okay, because he's between a rock and a hard place, and I'll go into that another time. Here's another. Do you realize that the U.S. funded and trained ISIS? Okay. Here's another one. America created Al-Qaeda and the ISIS terror group. Read some of this stuff. You think they're all lying? Okay. Here's another one. ISIS leader admits we are being funded by the Obama administration. What does the Obama administration mean? That means our tax dollars. your tax dollars and my tax dollars are funding our enemy to kill us. Okay? That's what's going on. Now, the big picture here is this. These leaders of the world who are the coup in the American government, okay, if you do the research, I've done many videos on this, I've gone into depth on it. When you look into what they're all about, many of them are Luciferians, okay? They believe that Lucifer is God. They believe that Lucifer is the enlightened one, and that is what they call him. I can give you all kinds of quotes. I've created movies about this. I've done all kinds of videos about this. Contact me if you want to know about it, okay? They are Luciferians, and they work for Satan. They are the army of Satan. And what is going on here? They're using another part of the army of Satan, the Muslim terrorists, to capture their objective. They're using the Muslim terrorists to do what is called divide and conquer, an age-old maxim. They bring the Muslim terrorists into countries throughout the world. They create division. And in that division, they then create a situation where they can come to take care of the division and create organizations like the United Nations, the League of Nations before the United Nations, which is a world government. And every time they make a move like that, they give themselves more power, okay, so that they can do what they ultimately want to do, is bring forth a one world government, a new world order, which brings forth the Antichrist. Okay, Revelation talks about it. I think it says 11 countries will become one, and that's what they're seeking to do. This is all prophesied, my friends, okay? And our churches are not talking about it. And that's why we are in the position, the dangerous position we are in. Make no doubt, let there be no doubt about it. We are in a dangerous position. Your children are in a dangerous position. You are in a dangerous position because of that freak in the office of president and the people behind him, okay? And they're using your money to make your dangerous position even more dangerous, okay? Please stand up, my friends. Do something. Get off of your cowardice couch and do something. Start creating a blog. Stand up. Remember your ancestors who died for your freedom. Do something. Do not listen. If you work for a government agency of any sort, over 50% of the workers in America, people who have jobs, they have government-related jobs. And throughout all of the government agencies, it's promoted the lies of this group that controls our government. It is your job to stand up, stand against the lies. Don't go along with their lying laws. Don't go along with their unconstitutional laws. Stand up. Do not go along with it. Speak. Speak. Say something. Tell your neighbors, your brothers and sisters, do something, my friends. Do something. Your lives depend upon it. In Jesus Christ's name.